Well, a growing movement seeks to address the challenges of working part-time. Nearly half of U.S. adults, 47%, have full-time jobs and the stability that comes with a regular schedule and salary. But the growing number of part-time workers in America are not so fortunate, so government officials on the local level are trying to limit the harshest challenges associated with the 28 million part-time positions here in the U.S. Vermont and San Francisco, for example, have adopted laws that give workers the right to request flexible and predictable schedules to facilitate their care of children or aging parents. Hannah Myles is a member of the Retail Action Project, a division of the Retail Wholesale and Department Store Union. She was working until recently as part of a time worker for Zara's clothing store. She joins me here in the studio. Bill Fletcher Jr. is the chair of the Retail Justice Alliance, an organization that supports the rights of retail workers, and Stacy Swimp is a spokesperson for Project 21, a conservative group, and he joins us by telephone. Let me start with your story, Hannah. What is it particularly that brought you squarely in the crosshairs of this problem?
Well, just working in retail, really. My retail experience recently, when I moved here from California, I had to get a job immediately, and Zara was the first company that hired me. And they promised me an opportunity of possibly growing with the company. So I took the position thinking that it would be a benefit to myself. However, once I started working there, they started switching things around. They started cutting my hours, having me do things that were not in the job description. And the opportunity for a promotion never really was in sight. So it just kind of seemed like we were like they're robots just doing their work and not being treated fairly and not being respected and given the proper opportunity to survive in this state. Okay.
Now, Bill, let me go to you now. I mean, we hear this story and we hear other stories like it, but what really can lawmakers do to regulate this, to create balance, but without punishing companies and forcing those companies to fire more full-time workers or let go of part-time workers?
I think that the whole objective of any of this legislation is to ensure fairness. It's basically saying to employers, you have the capacity, you have the technical capacity to plan. And bad planning on their part should not make an emergency for part-time workers. Increasing numbers of part-time workers are part-time not because they want to be, but because those are the jobs that are out there. When people are working in retail and they're told that they're going to be working on a Tuesday or Thursday, that's what they're expecting. That's the way they construct their lives, if they have child care or other things. When those are thrown up in the air, when the employer willy-nilly or for whatever reason, even legitimate, changes the schedule, it's completely disruptive, particularly to workers who are low income.
Now, Stacy, let me bring you in here and ask you the question, though, in terms of the companies that have these part-time jobs, don't they need some kind of flexibility in being able to not only keep the worker, but also to survive as a business?
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to this, and I don't believe government is the end-all, be-all, do-all to this thing. You know, you don't know exactly from business to business why these things can happen, and I'm certainly empathetic toward the young lady who shared her story, and I thank her for sharing it. But, you know, I worked in retail most of my life growing up, and a lot of times there are a lot of factors that are involved with that. You're trying to manage. The manager is usually the one doing that, not the owner, but the manager trying to manage payroll, trying to manage this. You know, if increased payroll taxes, if minimum wage is going up, there's so many variables that can be involved with that. The business owner has got to have some flexibility so he can figure out or she can figure out how to keep the doors open, how to keep the lights on, and how to keep these people employed. So you can't create a situation to where you're putting people's hands behind their back and assuming that you can create a rigid system that's going to work across the country in every single business. That's you know, good intentions, but you have unintended consequences. That won't work.
Well, let's talk a little bit of politics here, because it seems to me that on this issue, both Democrats and Republicans have tried to have their own way in this issue. When Democrats talk about the recovery, and they talk about all of the jobs that are being added, but let's look at last month. when we talk about the federal government announcing that there's some 288,000 jobs that were added to the payrolls, they forget to talk about the 530,000 full-time jobs that evaporated. Republicans, for their part, while bringing out this particular fact, also fail to talk about the fact that it's their corporations, the corporations that have benefited from their pro-business policies that seem to benefit the most from this incredible flexibility. So let me ask you, Mr. Fletcher, what do workers need to do on whether it's a state or a federal level to put pressure on lawmakers to bring this fairness that you talked about to a reality, since they are the majority of workers in America?
Right. Well, first of all, this is not about issues of flexibility. This is about fairness. This is about that worker that gets on a bus, goes for an hour, 2 hours to work, gets there and is told, we don't need you today, right? It's about that worker that has child care arrangements that are based upon an implied agreement with that employer, that when they then find that their days have been switched, they no longer have child care. It's about basic fairness. Now, what can workers do? Well, fundamentally, retail workers need to unionize. They need to build organizations among retail workers that can insist that employers treat them with respect. This is not about a paternalistic relationship between the employer and the workers. The employers need to understand that there are legitimate demands and expectations on the part of their workforce, and that needs to be respected.
Bill, Stacy, do you agree with that?
No, sir. I'll make 2 or 3 quick points. I would agree that there should be a system of efficiency. So certainly we need to encourage business owners to make sure, and managers, and again, let's not create an image of business owners being evil, because most people who own these retail stores are not in the stores managing them day to day. So you're really talking about managers. Another thing is, certainly the managers need to be trained to be efficient and considerate. Of course, I agree with him there. But when you start talking about, well, they need to unionize, well, that's subjective, because you have a lot of non-union businesses that are thriving and doing well. So there's no one-size-fits-all. I'm certainly not against collective bargaining and organizing. If that's what if the workers choose to do that and they have that opportunity with their business, that's fine. But you still don't want to create a situation to where you create an image of business owners being evil. They're not, these people are working too. They're trying to take care of their families too. Everybody's got to be in this thing together. It just can't be one side thinking that everything is unfair to them, because the business owners are facing a lot of unfair regulations from government. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of factors creating these problems we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have a little bit more balance in the discussion.
And finally, to you, Hannah, since they bring up this point about the power of what the workers have, but you were in fact punished, fired for trying to bring the attention to workers' rights in your situation.
Yes, actually, I was fired because of that, because I was trying to organize my store in order to bring numbers and power, because there's power in numbers when we can come together and agree that we're all being mistreated and not given the proper hours, and we're struggling and we want more hours and we want these opportunities and we're not being given them. I've reached out. Do you
think then the companies should guarantee should there be some kind of a contract or some kind of written or verbal agreement between the company in terms of the times, and it's got to be a quick answer?
Yes, of course I do. Of course I do, yes. I know in Europe, actually, they get treated a lot better in the retail business, and I feel like we should have those same opportunities here and the same rights here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing your story. Also, thank you for joining us, Bill Fletcher and Stacy Swimp. And I'm sure this discussion will go on. We'd love to have you back for more of it.
Thank you.